On a quiet morning at the edge of the galaxy, a human mechanic received a sealed message from the Dragon Empire. It promised him a powerful partner, but behind the careful words hid a dangerous secret. What was meant as a cruel joke by an emperor would soon become a destiny that neither man nor dragon could ever control. A single arrival would ignite questions, expose buried truths, and spark a bond strong enough to change the fate of two worlds. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. On a Tuesday morning, the light outside Aurora Dock 9 felt like soft tin. Nolan Hart stood in his workshop, sleeves shoved past his elbows, when the courier drone nudged through the bay seals and placed a small crystal on his desk. The thing carried the shimmering tone of conclave authority. He lifted it, and pale color braided through the facets as the message unfolded across his neural feed. They had accepted his request for a technical partnership. Someone would come to help him knit human systems to Dragonkin design. The name hovered in his vision: Princess Senri Caliph of the Celestine Conclave. The words around the name were too careful, formal in a way that felt like someone holding a door closed with their back while smiling through a crack. Temperament suitable for interspecies engagement, demonstrated competence, expedited dispatch. He reread the lines, then set the crystal down as if it might tip. Nolan walked the narrow stairs to the observation ring and looked out at the traffic lanes. Ships stitched slow curves between human colonies and the Conclave's floating keeps. 3 years ago, at a crowded exchange, he'd seen a young dragonkin kneel by a failing service bot, while silk-clad nobles told her to leave it. She tore thin strips from a ceremonial drape, rewired a charred bundle, and whispered to the machine as if soothing a child. When it flickered alive, her eyes held a quiet joy that felt older than anger. Her family had hurried her away. He never forgot the way she glanced back, as if hoping the little bot might keep going without anyone's permission. Far above, in the cool blue of the conclave spires, Emperor Kadrin rolled a similar crystal in his talons, and Empress Mireth stood near a lattice window that caught every color of morning. Their daughters, Solara and Neri, watched while trying not to watch. The meeting would never be recorded. Words snapped soft as silk. A human mechanic, a distant dock, a timely answer. A grandmother's foresight was not named, only the shadow of it. Senri, the youngest, asked the wrong questions and opened the right doors. Distance might make the difference. That was the unspoken gamble. No one told Nolan any of it. He spent the next cycle cleaning like a man chasing gravity. The guest cabin warmed 15 degrees. The vents hummed. The tool wall lined up like a choir. He set a small bowl on the work table, without admitting it was for a visitor he wanted to welcome. Not as an asset, but as a person who deserved a gentler landing than a political shove. He tried to sleep. Memory had other plans. He kept seeing that market. The nurse gentle claws, the torn silk, the tired pride in a face too young to carry it. He did not yet know her name then. Now he did. The message had written it across his mind. The transport, the real mystery, had already docked, quiet as breath, inside his chest. In those same hours, Senri packed 3 pods. She chose plain flight suits, a well-used toolkit, a worn book of star charts, and a simple heater for hands that ran cold when she was worried. Down the corridor, laughter bounced off crystal walls. She stood by a window and let it pass through her like wind. She thought of the many small truths She had spoken in rooms that did not want them. Then she put her hand on the old stone at the landing and whispered a promise she had not yet shaped, to look for the path that was real, even if it ran against the paint on the floor. The ship slipped from the spire at artificial dawn. Senri watched the keeps recede until they were only ornaments on a far horizon. She closed her eyes and pictured a cramped human workshop where parts were stacked for use, not display, and a pair of honest hands waiting with questions no one had coached. Out in the lanes, two stories moved toward each other, carried by engines and the faint pull of choices made long before. The transport kissed the dock with a soft, hollow thud. Bay lights warmed from steel to amber as pressure equalized. Nolan reached the hatch before the locks finished cycling, then forced himself one step back so he wouldn't look like a child racing a toy. The door parted, and cool ship air met the station's gentler breath. Senri stepped down with quiet balance. She was taller than he remembered and a little thinner, as if she had been walking uphill for a long time. Her scales held a matte sheen like river stones at dusk, not the polished shine of court displays. Her eyes were a layered gold, watchful and calm. "Princess Senri Calith," he said, offering his hand and a steadiness he had practiced. She placed her taloned palm in his, careful with the curve of claw against skin. There was strength there. And restraint. "Nolan Hart," she said. His name carried the small music of her dual voice. "Thank you for the warm air." "You're welcome to adjust anything," he said, half smiling. "This place learns fast, but forgets slowly." They moved her pods inside. He had already set the heater in the guest cabin. She noticed and tipped her head in thanks. In the galley, he cooked simple protein and brewed a dark drink he warned almost every visitor about. She tried it, grimaced, and then took another sip on purpose. They ate without ceremony. Work grease lived at their elbows, and that felt to both of them like a good sign. When talk came, it didn't come as gossip. It came like tools on a table, one after another, each with a use. He admitted he had hoped for conclave knowledge to bridge systems, then confessed the truth behind the plan. 3 years ago at the Mercantile Exchange, he had seen a young dragonkin with ruined silk and shining patience. He did not know her then. The memory wouldn't let go. "I have been building a place where kindness is a tool," he said quietly. "I thought you might like such a place." She rested her cup, the steam lifting between them. "My family said I am competent," she said with a small wry smile that did not reach her eyes. "They did not send details." "Competent is a poor word for what I saw," he replied. "You listened to a broken machine like it mattered." The words shifted something inside her. She had not realized how long she had gone without being seen. She looked around the workshop. Everything was arranged for use. Nothing here begged for applause. She let out a slow breath she hadn't known she held. They toured the bays. She traced energy paths in the air with a fingertip. He answered with mounting brackets and safe clearances. A burned Andromedan nav ring lay open on a stand. She pointed to the hairline, and he nodded like a man who enjoyed being corrected when the correction brought truth. Late, after the lights laid long shadows, they sat across a small table. His question came plainly. "What did your family not say?" She watched the way he asked, no hunger in it, only care. "I asked questions," she said, "about pricing that hurt small ports, about officers who took more than skill. Some doors closed, others opened. They did not like the ones I opened." "Does anyone ever like opened windows?" he asked, with a soft humor. "Everyone likes light," she said, "until it shows the dust." They shared a thin smile. In that fragile, ordinary moment, trust took a seat in the room and stayed. The next station morning, they worked shoulder to shoulder. He showed her the calibration steps he'd written for human hands. She adjusted them for dragonkin temperature drift. Their methods fit like a lock and a key made years apart by different makers who somehow aimed for the same shape. They did not speak about the careful language in the message from the spires. They did not name the old fear sitting in some far palace. They named bolts, amperage, airflow, and the lines between what is right and what is easy. Naming those things together felt like drawing a map that could hold both of them. Somewhere beyond the dock, a ship older than their charts drifted under black suns. It would soon enter their lives like a quiet door swinging inward. It announced itself as a whisper of static against the deep-range receivers. An object without beacon drifted at the edge of the system, slow and certain, as if it trusted the stars to carry it home. Nolan ran a sweep, and the outline appeared. Curved hull, sealed spine, panels etched with a language that tasted like iron in the mouth. Salvage teams had tried and failed to wake it. The council wanted minds that could listen before they pulled. Nolan looked at Senri, and she was already reaching for a toolkit. They suited up and crossed the small distance in a bright shuttle that hummed like a kind ince. Inside, the air was thin and old. The ship held quiet, like a held breath. Senri's scales dimmed to a thoughtful blue as she walked the corridor and touched the seams. "It is not dead," she said softly. "It is asleep." They found the core beneath a rib of alloy that had learned patience. Nolan traced power routes, ready to back off at the first wrong rise. Senri adjusted plates with the lightest pressure, like smoothing a child's hair. When the energy climbed, it did not snap, it sighed. Dim lights woke, one after another, like footsteps down a long hallway. The main display flickered, searching for a face it knew. Senri spoke a greeting in old trade words. The system answered with gentle images. Maps unfolded, star lines like threads. Records blinked alive. Joint landings, shared tools, two banners touching at edges without one covering the other. Humans and early dragonkin had traveled together once, not as owner and favor, but as partners. They taught each other what only the other could see. They argued, laughed, solved. They wrote the agreements, not in stone, but in hours spent in engine rooms and in mess halls where language mixed and became food. Nolan stood very still. Senri's hands trembled, then steadied. She turned to him, golden eyes bright. "We are not trying to invent something new," she said. "We are remembering something true." Back at Aurora Dock 9, word of their quiet awakening ran ahead of them like sunlight. Captains changed course. Students sent requests. Traders carried the tale out to any station that would listen. Work multiplied, not because they shouted, but because their proof. She read the note through, then through again. She placed two claws on the pad. The words melted to blank. The silence that followed felt like a sunrise. "I choose this dock," she said, looking around the little room where tools waited with open mouths. "I choose honest work. I choose the map we just found." "Then we keep walking it," Nolan said, and his voice had that steady warmth she had begun to trust more than any promise. Their days grew wide. When problems rose, they answered with both sets of hands, and the third thing their hands made together. Some nights they argued, because real builders do. Some mornings they laughed at the bad coffee and the good heat. The station began to learn their rhythm and offered it to newcomers like a song. They did not know that far away, two sisters stood by a window and watched the same maps light their father's council walls. Truth has a long reach. Even the tall spires could not shade it forever. Months folded into years, and Aurora Dock 9 found its second name, the Workshop School. Young engineers from quiet moons and crowded ports came to learn how cooperation tastes in the mouth. Sometimes sweet, sometimes sharp, always real. Nolan taught safe clearances, load balance, and the habit of pausing before the last turn of a wrench. Senri taught how energy flows like water and how listening saves parts and people. Together, they taught that respect is a tool you sharpen by using. One afternoon, a message arrived marked with the sister seals, not the emperor's. Solara and Nairi looked almost the same, perfect polish, stillness trained by 1,000 dinners, but their eyes had new weather in them. They spoke without ornament. A grandmother had once murmured a foresight. The youngest would either unmake power or remake it with light. Fear had sat at the family table ever since, calling itself wisdom. When Senri questioned, fear heard the footfall of change and called it ruin. They had watched from the safety of silence. They were done with quiet now. They said she had built something the palace could not command and should not own. The message ended with a plain admission. We were wrong about you. We want to be right by you now. Senri let the words settle like snow. Then she breathed, and the air in the room felt new. Nolan laced his fingers with hers and waited without telling her how to feel. She finally smiled, a small, unguarded thing that lived in her eyes. I am free, she said. I did not know how heavy that old story was until it lifted. On the second anniversary of the derelict's waking, another message arrived, this time marked by the emperor himself. Age had softened the edges of his face. He asked to visit as a guest, to see the bridge his daughter had raised with a human, and to apologize. Nolan's hand tightened on Senri's, a quiet promise that the ground under her feet would not shift without her say. She sent, "You may come as a guest. This is our home. You will be welcome on the same terms as any who come to learn. The visit would come later. Work came first. The day after the emperor's request, a freighter limped in with a failing spine. A Vulari scientist arrived with questions about safe fusion at scale. 2 Andromedan apprentices brought pastries that tasted like starfruit and engine smoke. The station breathed, and its breath was many voices learning the same song. That night, Nolan and Senri stood on the observation ring and watched ships swing in and out like slow comets. Any regrets? He asked, their quiet ritual. She looked at the bays below, at the teachers they had grown into, at the small arguments and large repairs, at the hands and claws that had found a shared pulse. Only that I waited so long to trust my own measure, she said. He smiled against her temple. We're on time, he said. Some clocks begin when we meet the people who make them run true. ... A chime sounded. A new student cohort had docked early. Senri flicked the intercom and welcomed them with warmth that felt like a hearth. When she cut the channel, she turned to Nolan. Do you remember the day your coffee tried to fight me? The coffee loses every day, he said, but I keep brewing. She laughed, soft and bright. They moved back to the workshop, where tools waited and plans slept under clamps. People would later say the Celestin conclave tried to send a problem far away, and instead sent a seed to good soil. They would say a human repairer asked for help and received a whole life. The saying would shift in the telling, because that is what stories do. The work would not shift. It would keep doing what it was meant to do, mending, teaching, building bridges wide enough for everyday feet. In the book of their days, the cruel humor that set this in motion is only a small line near the start. The longer chapter is the gift that grew from it. Not a gift wrapped in titles or in easy praise, but the kind you unwrap a little more each morning as you step into a workshop and choose honest effort, steady care, and clear sight. If you look for the ending, you will find them where they have always been, side by side at a bench lightly scarred by real use, writing neat notes in the margins of schematics, trading winks when a stubborn coupling finally turns. Around them, Aurora Dock 9 rises and expands like a living organism. It has lungs made of airlocks and a heart that beats in two rhythms, scale and skin, heat and hand. The bridge they built does not stand still. It breathes. And when dawn tilts through the panels and the station wakes, Nolan makes the coffee that keeps losing, and Senri runs the diagnostics that keep winning. They greet the day like makers do, with sleeves rolled, minds open, and a promise renewed in quiet words. One more repair, one more lesson, one more honest day. In a universe that once tried to make a joke at their expense, they answered with something better. A life so steady and bright that even the ones who meant to wound must squint and admit the light is beautiful.